Is the strain of Ebola that we're seeing today in Africa and the United States actually a weaponized version of the virus? Well, our guest today, Professor Francis Boyle from the University of Illinois College of Law, he believes so, and he drafted the U.S. Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act of 1989, which is the U.S. domestic implementing legislation for the Biological Weapons Convention. His books include Biowarfare and Terrorism, and he's here to tell us a little bit about the new strain of Ebola he believes is weaponized. Professor, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. My best to your viewing audience.
Professor, with another case of Ebola showing up in New York and many health workers saying that they are not prepared or have the necessary protective equipment, there are some who are saying that there is probably more actual cases of Ebola in the United States that we just don't know about. What is your opinion of the true Ebola threat here in the United States?
Well, I think it's a lot more serious than they're letting on, and the reason being is that the CDC is saying it's a 21-day quarantine rate, while the WHO says no, that figure is incorrect. As far as we're concerned, it should be twice that, 42 days, and that only includes 98% of the people. So if you do a little calculation, we're talking about more than 50 days of quarantine before anyone can be given an all clear here. Second, we know for a fact that what worked in Nigeria so far was that everyone was traced down, whereas down in Texas, so far everyone's being traced, but unfortunately the Dallas 43 were released after only 21 days, and then the 4,000 people on that Ebola cruise were left without being were let go without being traced on the CDC guidelines. The CDC guidelines are completely worthless and dangerous. That's pretty clear today in New York, where they were saying, well, the CDC guidelines were based on the MSF guidelines, and those are no good either, as we saw with the doctor in New York. He worked with MSF. They had a 21-day guideline quarantine, and he brought Ebola to New York. So the guidelines that are being applied by the CDS, in my opinion, are worthless and dangerous, and I'm afraid we will be seeing more Ebola outbreaks here in America. Look, it's already been reported that the Department of Defense, the National Institutes of Health, have a computer program on the spread of Ebola. So they know everything that is going to happen in West Africa, here in the United States, Spain, and in Europe. We now have the index case in Dallas. We have an index case in New York for sure. We have an index case for Spain. So all they have to do is pump this new information in there, and they know what's going to happen. But I don't think you can believe anything the CDC is saying. You know, it's all propaganda, lies, and disinformation.
So President Obama appoints an Ebola czar, and we have a Surgeon General. I remember when I was a young boy, we used to see him all the time on television, see Everett Koop, and now, of course, the CDC director, Tom Frieden, he was making all the public statements. So why the need to appoint an Ebola czar, and where is the Surgeon General?
Sure. Well, the Ebola czar, Ron Klain, he was after me at Harvard Law School along with Obama. He's just a political fix-it man and hatchet man for the Democratic Party. His job is to keep this whole disaster under control until after the November 4 elections, when the fate of the Senate is at stake for the Democrats. Look, they're having a testimony in Congress today on Ebola, and the House asked Klain to show up, and he refused to show up. And the reason is he didn't want to perjure himself before this House committee, or even lie. If you're not sworn under oath and you tell a lie, it's still a crime. So he's not showing up. He's not a doctor. his job is to get Obama past the November 4 election, pretty much like the Benghazi talking points.
Now, we just reported on Mr. Klain's statements that he feels the #1 global concern is actually the overpopulation of Africa. But when we dug into the facts, the largest populations of the world are actually in Europe. But should we be concerned that his personal beliefs are that there's overpopulation in Africa when he's tasked with trying to control the Ebola virus, which is killing people there?
Well, I don't think he's in charge of controlling anything. I think it's pretty clear that this Ebola, whatever it is, came out of one or more of the U.S. Biosafety Level 4 laboratories in Africa, West Africa. There are 3 of them, one in Guinea, where it started, one in Liberia, and one in Sierra Leone.
So where's the proof to that?
Well, you just have to hit the mainstream news media sources, science sources, whatever. They, BSL-4 labs do every. I have a book if you want to read it, Biowarfare and Terrorism. BSL-4 labs do every type of hideous biowarfare work you can possibly imagine, including on Ebola, and it's all dual use, offensive, defensive.
So you believe that this strain that's actually ravaging Africa and now has made its way to the United States is actually a weaponized strain?
Well, I can't say it has necessarily been weaponized, but I believe it comes out of those 3 laboratories, right? One or more of them where this started. In today's New York Times, you'll see the Galveston, University of Texas there, a longtime U.S. Biowarfare Center, has produced a vaccine agent for Ebola and some type of animal mouth disease by means of genetic engineering. Likewise, we know the National Institutes for Health has produced a similar GMO agent involving the cold virus and what appears to be enhanced Ebola. And all that work is dual use. What happens here, they will say we're doing it for defensive.
I'm gonna backtrack here for 1 second, because you said a hybrid strain, a genetically modified strain of Ebola that has been crossbred with the cold virus. Is that what you said that they are working on?
Yes, that's the case. Yes, National Institutes of Health, right? They've done it, and they're over there in the BSL-4 committee lab in Kenema, right? And then you have Galveston down there with what looks like enhanced Ebola and some type of animal foot and mouth disease. And they've been GMO'd together as well. So the way this works is they will say, these biowarriors will say, well, there might be some type of emerging disease out there that we need to investigate and protect the American people against. I've read these contracts. And so what we have to do is first create the emerging disease ourselves, usually by GMO, genetically modified organism, combining some well-known biowarfare agent with some type of other delivery device. And then once we have the agent, then of course we'll develop the vaccine on the basis of the agent. Well, that's what a biowarfare weapon is all about. You have the offensive agent, the defensive vaccine, and you put the 2 of them together, you have a weapon. And the reason you need both is that you would not launch biowarfare unless you have a safe, effective vaccine for your leadership elite. That's one of the most fundamental principles of biological warfare. So we've been doing this type of research way back in 1976 when Ebola was first found over there in Congo, Zaire. The WHO ordered it shipped to Porton Down, which is the British Fort Detrick, and they sent it then to the Center for Disease Control. I have an official government document that the Center for Disease Control has been involved in biological warfare programs for the Pentagon over in Sierra Leone as early as 1988. And it had to have been sometime before that in order to build the lab. So my guess here is that the original Ebola gets shipped to Port and Down. It's weaponized. They ship it off to CDC. It gets weaponized. And then somehow it finds its way back there in West Africa. The CDC are not the good guys here. In addition to that, we know that during the Reagan administration, the neocons in the Reagan administration ordered CDC and American Type Culture Collection to ship 40 shipments of weapons-specific biological agents that they had in their inventory to Saddam Hussein in Iraq to be weaponized and used against Iran. And some of those agents then were involved in the blowback against our own troops, as later producing the Gulf War syndrome. You can find all the citations for that in my book, Biowarfare and Terrorism.
So what do you make of the 4,000 troops now that have been sent to Africa, to the area that's being hardest hit by Ebola? Why do you believe the U.S. has dispatched so many troops, especially when they have no real medical training?
No, none at all. The 101st Airbornes and the Marines, these are elite killers. They have no training to provide any medical assistance to anyone. The Bush Jr. administration set up Africa Command, AFRICOM, and it's had no headquarters so far but Stuttgart, Germany. Liberia offered to put the headquarters for AFRICOM. So I think what we're seeing here today is the 101st Airborne and the Marines being sent over there to establish the outpost for AFRICOM in Africa. We know that they've already moved the headquarters to the 101st Airborne, 500 people over there. So I think this is just the beginning. The British are doing now the same in Sierra Leone. Last I saw, they're moving in 4,000 troops. The French already have troops in Mali that they invaded 2 years ago, well, a year and a half, and that was staged from Senegal. And their former colonial power is Guinea, the Brits, Sierra Leone, ours, Liberia. So I think it's very clear these three Western imperial colonial powers are moving back into Africa, in our case for the first time, with substantial military forces to control and dominate the enormous natural resources that the west coast of Africa has, including offshore oil and gas that's already been reported to be among the top sources in the world. They have bauxite in Guinea, diamonds in Sierra Leone, the rubber plantations in Liberia, you name it, they have everything over there. So I think that's what's behind this invasion. Look, the 101st Airborne, these are the guys who dropped behind the front lines at Normandy. They invade. The Marines, my dad was in the Marine Corps in World War II. He invaded Saipan City in Okinawa. They just kill everything in sight until they've accomplished their objective.
Professor, we're almost out of time. I have one more question for you before we go. And it seems that President Obama is more reacting to Ebola here in the United States. We're not seeing a lot of action as far as what's being done at airports or as far as flights coming in from the infected parts of the world. Why do you suppose that is?
I think Obama knows everything that is going on here. They have that DOD NIH computer program. He knows what's going on. Obama was after me at Harvard Law School. Klain was after me at Harvard Law School. His whole White House there, Harvard Law School mafia. These people are very bright, very intelligent, very sophisticated, and incredibly devious. So they know exactly what's going on. Everyone coming into the country from West Africa should have been DNB, do not board. Very simple. We have all their flight itinerary there in the Department of Homeland Security computers. We should have stopped anyone coming in here until they went through, say, at least a 50-day quarantine.
So how come we haven't? What is taking the president so long to initiate any actual action?
I guess you'd have to ask Obama why he's doing this, why he's letting Ebola into the country, and what is the real agenda here. Yeah, I guess you can draw whatever conclusions you want on that, but the only conclusion I can draw is that he has no problem with the spread of Ebola here in the United States because he's done nothing effective to stop it.
All right, Professor, we do have to go, and maybe we'll get President Obama on the program to answer that question. Thanks for joining us.
My best regards. We're both from the south side of Chicago and lived in Hyde Park and went to Harvard Law School and at the University of Chicago. Right.
All right, Professor. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, bye-bye.
That was author and Professor Francis Boyle.